All right, we'll be starting at 1 p.m. on the dot Mountain Time. So we'll give it a few more seconds here. All right, so it's 1 p.m. on the dot. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome to People and Pipelines, building a scalable data strategy with Showbie as part of Techstar Startup Week Edmonton. In the next 30 minutes, I'll be sharing Showbie's data journey in response to the tremendous organizational growth we've experienced in the last year. I'll share our breaking points and our learnings from a data perspective as we navigated building a scalable data pipeline and expanding the data team itself. All right, so I'm Ella. I'm the senior data analyst here at Showbie, and we're going to do a bit of time traveling and go back to a time not too long ago, but it may very well feel that way. So the pre-COVID days, what was that like? So back in November 2019, I joined Showbie as a junior data analyst. They had a data analyst for over 2 years, and she was moving into a different role at the company. And in the time that she served in data, the company size fluctuated in the 20s. And at the time I joined, we were at a total of 28 team members. As a software company, the team was largely composed of developers while also housing members of the business team. And out of the 28, just over 30% of the team belonged to departments categorized as data consumers. So from the beginning, Showbie has incorporated data into business functions. Customer support uses product data to troubleshoot issues, allowing them to be more responsive to user concerns. Customer success allocates more resources towards at-risk customers by reviewing metrics like product utilization and customer health. Marketing can optimize marketing spend and effort by looking at successful campaigns in the past. Sales heavily uses data for lead generation efforts to maximize revenue as well as to track their own performance. All of the departments here at Showbie may differ in how they use data, and some may very well be more reliant on data to complete their work. In an internal survey last month, we found that over 85% of all departments at Showbie gave a data reliance score of 70% or above, indicating a very high reliance on data to complete their work. So going back to late 2019, there was already a thirst for data across business functions. There was one data team member which would deliver on this need, as well as taking on other maintenance tasks. This included overseeing the ETL process, which I'll discuss in a few slides, so just bear with me, as well as performing routine data cleanup and data imports. Sometimes I felt like Julie Andrews in the meadow, looking out into the horizon in awe of not the mountains, but rather the endless possibilities that we had yet to uncover with our data. But with one person, this data exploration was going to have to wait. And why? Well, we're going to just dive in a little bit into greater detail behind the duties of an analyst. So the first is what people generally think of the data team. When a team member wants data, they file a ticket with some requirements. There'll be some back and forth while the ticket is clarified for any ambiguity or for additional context. And with an increased understanding, the analyst may need to connect with other parties to retrieve this information. They run a query to surface the information and present it into a usable format. And after some further enhancements, the final product, whether it is a chart, a dashboard, or an automation, will be presented to the stakeholder. But what does retrieving this information actually look like? So Showbie produces a plethora of product data across their two platforms. And data is responsible for the pathways after the product event metrics are unified in Amazon Redshift databases. And at Showbie, we adopted the extract, load, transform ELT model, and this functionality was entirely run within the business intelligence tool Chartio. For queries on large data sets, this extract and load would happen within the data store and the data transformation in the chart itself. Now, this is just one part of being an analyst. I would not be a true data analyst if I didn't cover one of the last, and sometimes less fun responsibilities, data cleaning. And to demonstrate, I pulled a fun field for us. So here are some of the country values from our Socrative database that were available before the country parameter was tightened up on the product interface. And as you can see, we have quite the diversity here. We have users that entered emojis as a country name, or maybe they wanted Far, Far Away and Fortnite to be recognized as countries. I also didn't realize that there are probably 10 different ways to potentially spell Australia based on our customers' information here. And aside from spelling mistakes and abbreviations, and comes also the variations between the English version of the country name and how it is spelled in its official language. Not to even mention the non-English characters on top of that. So this is just one field in one table in one database. So we have quite a lot cut out for us here. So hopefully I've been able to set the tone of what an analyst was doing at Showbie in the lead up to COVID. So we're going to move to a date, this date, March 13, 2020. And for those employees from Showbie here joining us, hopefully you were not triggered by this date, but it was our last day in the office before we went to work remotely. And it was also the same date in the early hours of that morning, Showbie went down in response to a surge in system utilization. This was triggered by students in Norway who were attending school remotely for the first time, a majority via Showbie. And fortunately, our wonderful team was able to restore Showbie services, but it helped us see that our work was about to change upside down. So, with schools racing to switch to remote learning, we saw increased demand from our customers to provide greater visibility into Showbie usage at their school or district. The pandemic lockdowns meant that many students weren't physically in class anymore, creating anxiety for administrators who are used to the full picture of teaching, learning, and student well-being happening in brick and mortar classrooms. We connected with administrators across 33 schools and listened to their data needs. Within a month of Showbie working remotely, we launched the beta version of the Showbie Admin Reports and Analytics dashboard. And we continued to collect feedback and revise on this dashboard with the final product offering granular details into engagement across students, teachers, parents, and classes at a given school. Besides creating the dashboard, we had some work cut out for us because behind the scenes, the data team was battling to maintain the data stores behind this dashboard and others. Row limits meant multiple data stores were having to be created to extract the data needed. Based on the volume of the data stores had to be staggered to allow the runs to be successful, but we were running out of available time slots. We weren't able to accommodate specific formatting enhancements that the team wanted, as there were limitations in Chartio's offering. In order to massage the data a certain way, we had to switch to the advanced mode, but the number of steps and the queries required made the UX cluttered and difficult to modify. And I provided a snapshot of some behind the scenes here, and you can just see that this is just one part of a very long process. So it was very cluttered and very messy. And certain charts and dashboards on top of that were just being unresponsive or slow if they were querying from live databases, again, with the amount of information it was dealing with. So we saw, on top of that, increased technical bugs in other tools that we relied on to send information to data consumers. So suffice to say, the state of the data team in mid-2020 had turned from putting out fire to fire juggling. We had already been aware of some of the data issues prior to the pandemic, but we were able to allocate adequate time to troubleshoot and creatively work around certain issues. But with the increase in requests in customer data, particularly with an interest in class and student level information, this was taking its toll on our ELT approach. Data wasn't a balancing act between the growth in data requests being placed on the business team from external customers, as well as navigating the growth and data technical issues. And as you can imagine, we are not far from a breaking point. So beautiful fire juggling happening in this slide. All right, there we go. The added ingredient was our own internal growth. I guess our own catch 22. In October 2020, we were reaching above 40 employees, and above 40% had become data consumers. And this was the perfect ingredient for a data request storm, and coupled with a growth in data troubleshooting, led to this glass shattering moment. And it was just no longer enough just to focus on priority items that had an immediate impact on our team. Multiple items with the same priority level kept piling up, along with the pre existing data issues previously mentioned. It was stressful, to say the least, and this process was just not scalable. Data needed an intervention. So, this was a valuable lesson that we had to become more proactive in nature rather than constantly serving in reactive mode. And it was time for an overhaul. So, what we're going to do, our data architecture had to be modernized as our current system was just no longer working for us. So, what else was out there? What are others doing? Our CTO conducted some discovery work in the big data realm, and we'll cover this in the next few slides. And it was also a time to hire another data team member. We were looking for a silver bullet with a strong, interesting background who would independently solve our data needs. And on top of that, we decided to hire some data enricher contractors to focus on more labor intensive data cleanup, freeing us to focus on more technical work. All right, so very quickly, we found our senior data analyst. He had been a data lead for a few years and had an impressive resume with all of these keywords. So ML certified, Tableau, BigQuery, Data Studio, experience with corporate training and Python, all of these beautiful words. So finally, things felt they were turning around here in our data team realm here at Showbie. And going back to the data discovery work, our CTO learns that an ETL framework, extract, transform, load, may actually be a solution to our problem and reduce the issues from earlier. So in part of the data loader, the Stitch would look at extracting data from our Amazon Redshift database, allowing us to centralize the data of interest into a single source. And it would allow us to move away from querying mission critical data systems that we were currently doing in Chartio. The transform layer comes in by incorporating dbt, which you can see on the right-hand side. And it's a data development framework which allows us to transform and refine data based on business logic. dbt allows us to build more generalized models, which we can reference, and later more specialized models, saving us time by using reusable code. And the last point, so we've talked about the loading, we've talked about the refinement, that transformation piece, and then lastly, the loading. So since this is that last component where it consumes the refined data from the final model in dbt and syncs the refined data at scheduled intervals into downstream tools like Salesforce. And this was our final piece of the puzzle. So all pieces came together to create this beautiful piece of art right here. I don't know about you, but I think this would put Picasso up running for his money. And the pipeline spec was finalized, and our senior data analyst was wrapping up his training and was moving on to dbt tasks. I have to admit, it felt pretty good. Life was good at that point. And then, yes, hurdles. So in February of this year, it was announced that Chartio had been acquired by Atlassian. In our already busy state, looked like we needed to carve out time to scope different BI tools to find a replacement for Chartio for our data pipeline. But no, February wasn't done with us just yet. We faced one more hurdle. So after 3 months at Showbie, our senior data analyst left us for another opportunity. dbt work grinded to a halt. So this was a shock for the team. As Showbie generally experiences less than 3% employee attrition. And this was a lesson for us, not to chase the purple unicorn when hiring. We realized that we needed a team of great people that were invested in our company and were strong across different aspects. This is a hard lesson to learn, as hiring, onboarding, and training is expensive, and their departure was a setback in the short term. So data went back to the drawing board. Our data pipeline was still very much in its infancy, and data demand was at an all-time high with 60 people at Showbie, and 45% of them were data consumers. And we had one analyst. So hiring was obvious, but the following questions weren't. How many data people did we need to support 60 people? How many data analysts or data engineers did we need? Who would they interact with? And this led to us hiring one data architect with intermediate experience to help us drive the big data pipeline piece to completion. We also hired a junior data analyst to support us with our high volume of data requests. We hired an additional 3 data enrichers in a contract capacity to continue our data cleanup efforts and assist in manual data tasks. And I took the reins of training the team up and investigating the BI tools on the market, as Chowdhury's deadline was only a year away. All right. So let's fast forward to a few months later to August of this year. Our team growth continues, and we hit a total of 90 employees, which is pretty crazy if you look at this graph here. And nearly 50% of them are data consumers. Woo! And more regional sales teams are developing and are looking for data as they ramp up. The nature of the data requests were changing, and they wanted access to real-time data workflows to improve lead generation efforts. The team was recognizing the value of treating data as a product rather than a place that caters for ad hoc requests. And by treating it as a product, it would lead to greater outcomes for the wider team. We needed to make an investment in expanding our data team. We also saw more of a conversation on embedding data analysts and departments to better anticipate departments' data needs. Data consumers wanted to be trained by analysts and empowered on how to interface with data in the future. The data architect role was further defined and would focus on making the data available and refining an upstream of the BI tool, so less data transformation was required for data analysts. With this in mind, we continued to scale the data team. We looked to fill another 3 data roles, a product data analyst to provide more support to the product team, a senior operations data analyst to support the emerging finance and biz ops department, and a junior data architect to support the data pipeline efforts. And here's something interesting I wanted to share when we were looking for data hires. And as expected, with more junior roles, we tend to get more applications as more people meet the criteria. However, the part I want to point out is the difference in applications between the junior roles of the data analyst and the data architect. The data analyst role had around 400 applications, 8 times as many applications as the data architect role. That's a huge difference. I'd love to see more of a conversation about the diversity of data roles available and drive more interest in the data architect, data engineer role. We need to be promoting it, which is definitely a community effort. All right. So after an extensive, and the learning from that was, yeah, we're noticing that more job hunters in the data realm are applying for the data analyst role rather than the data architect role. Cool. So after an extensive hiring process, which could be its own presentation, so who knows, watch out for part 2, we landed on our new data team members. And our current data structure follows a multiple pod structure, and which is currently pictured on the slide in front of you, and each of which owns full stack problems in a given area of business. And the entire pod, data architects and data analysts, will work on the same problems. The analysts would be the ones with the deepest knowledge of their domains because of the business context being so important. And as a result, they would be largely driving the decision making. The data architects will focus on the delivery of quality, accurate information to the analysts. This setup is one that we'll probably continue to tweak as the team develops within their roles. So at Showbie, building the data team came with its own challenges as we moved away from our old data tech stack while navigating high data demand when a team scaled very recently and very quickly. We grew from one analyst to a team of six full-time data team members and are continuing to build our modernized data architecture to increase scalability. So if you're looking to grow your own data team, here's my piece of advice that we learned over the last 2 years. Number one, monitor your tech stack. If you're expecting growth and your tech stack is not working efficiently, I do recommend start to invest in a modern tech stack for your data team. Two, opt for a team rather than a silver bullet approach. Knowledge sharing and team ownership is crucial, and you don't want to lose momentum if people leave and your team is too small. Three, review your data team size when your team grows. If the number of data consumers grows, not to mention if you want to revamp your data pipeline, you need to hire extra data analysts and data architects. And four, data is not solely a dashboard factory for end users. If you want to be a data driven organization, you've got to productionize your data delivery. And data should behave as a product where we perform discovery work, gather requirements, build, and deploy, making features available to the stakeholder. So it's been a journey here at Showbie, but for the first time since March 13th, 2020, I'm feeling more like Julie Andrews back in the meadow and seeing the endless possibilities feeling closer than ever. With our amazing data team, the hills are alive with the sound of data. And that's all from me. Uh, Enjoying the comments here. Thank you so much. And I'll leave it to any questions if anyone has anything for the remaining time. If not, I'll end the broadcast here. Awesome. Thanks, team. Hope everyone has a great time and great day.